Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So we're back with another Wild Rift Fundamentals video. I believe this one is episode 10, and we're going to be covering runes yet again. Now we covered this a couple of episodes ago, but by this time, there have been so many changes in the runes. Firstly, of course, the addition of all the new runes in patch 3.2, and also a lot of buffs and nerfs on various runes that honestly that video is pretty outdated. I'll probably change the description on that one to show that it is outdated. And we're going to do this new updated one, a new episode of Wild Rift Fundamentals. So, as I always say, Wild Rift Fundamentals is mainly for new/beginner players to better understand the game. And I really don't see people or other content creators like really doing videos like these to help new players. So I really wanted to do that. And even if you're an experienced player, who knows, you might learn something from this video. So we're going to cover the Keystone runes, then the Domination runes, the Resolve runes, then the Inspiration runes. And I'm going to basically mainly go over number one, what they do, how good they are, and who takes them. So I'm going to try to aim to make this video not so long, but we're going to cover whatever we want to. So or rather, I should say, we have to cover everything. So it's of course meant to be more informative as well. So first up, we're going to start with the first keystone, which is Electrocute. So Electrocute, hitting an enemy with 3 separate attacks or abilities within 3 seconds deals bonus adaptive damage, and that damage is 35 to 189 scaling with level. Also scales with bonus AD as well as scaling with AP, and it has a 20-second cooldown. So what this rune does, obviously, is when you hit people with 3 attacks, inclusive of basic attacks as well as damaging abilities, it will cause this lightning to strike from the sky, which does damage to the enemies. So basically, who is this good for? Basically anybody who wants to burst. Think like burst mages or burst assassins. So a lot of mid lane champions, some jungle champions like maybe Kha'Zix, Rengar, and Evelynn, and some supports who want to do damage as well. But of course, as I said, burst mage and burst assassin, doesn't matter what role you play, that's basically what you want to take. But the caveat with this rune is that it's very strong in the laning phase. Like, you will see Electrocute's damage in the laning phase is really a lot. Like, it can do like almost a quarter of someone's HP in the early game, but as you get to later stages of the game, it does scale with level and it does scale with your AD and AP. However, because everybody's defenses and health scales up as well, it becomes a lot less effective in the late game. So really, this is an early game laning rune where you want to get an advantage in the lane or in the earlier stages of the game with how much damage Electrocute does. But of course, basically for some champions who are burst related, they really have no better rune choice, so they just have to go for the Electrocute. Second option is Aery. So Aery, poke and protect, as it says. Your attacks and abilities send Aery to the target, damaging enemies or shielding allies. So the damage and the shield scales with both AD and AP as well. And the Aery will, of course, have a cooldown where it flies back from the enemy or ally back to you. So for this one, it's mostly taken by mages or champions who want to poke. So champions who want to poke include champions like, for example, Lethality Varus, who wants to do a lot of poking, and basically majority of the other champions who take it are number 1 mages, and number 2 supports. So of course, a lot of supports like to take Aery for both poke in lane and also for increased shielding effect. Think supports like Nami and Janna, and of course mages like Ziggs, for example, like to take Aery. So Aery is just a good rune all around throughout the game, and as it says, it does just give you a little bit of extra poke and a little bit of extra shield. So it's basically just good for the champions who can take it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So now we go on to Phase Rush. So Phase Rush, hitting an enemy champion with 3 separate attacks or abilities within 4 seconds, grants a large burst of movement speed as well as slow duration. So all the scalings you can see over there. Basically, this rune is basically it's a rune that people who want to catch up to enemies want to take. So basically, think champions like Olaf, Graves, Darius. But the real issue about Phase Rush in Wild Rift is it doesn't give you any combat stats, it just gives you movement speed. And because every other rune basically gives you some form of combat stats, at the moment, as of the recording of this video in patch 3.2, Phase Rush is not the optimal keystone for any single champion in the game. Everybody has some kind of better keystone than Phase Rush. So I think you only take this in very niche scenarios where you kind of really need that movement speed. So that is Phase Rush. So Conqueror, previously the best rune in the game basically. Now still, in my opinion, the best rune in the game. You gain stacks of Adaptive Force when you hit an enemy champion with attacks or abilities. It stacks up to 5 times, and when you are fully stacked with the 5 stacks, you deal bonus adaptive damage to champions. So on melee champions, that's 10% of bonus adaptive damage, and that is 7% on ranged champions. Each stack gives you 2 to 6 AD scaling with level, or 3 to 9 AP for 6 seconds. So basically, Conqueror is going to be a universal rune that you can take in basically every role that wants to damage. Now, of course, supports don't generally take it, but every role, fighters, mages who battle for long times, assassins even who are in the fight for a relatively long time, ADCs, basically any role that is not a damage support, or is not damage support, who is not a non-damage support, wants to take Conqueror basically. Because with that bonus adaptive damage, it really increases your damage output by a lot. And of course, with the extra AD or AP as well, of course, helps your cause as well. So yeah, basically everybody can take it, and basically it's going to be the best rune for a lot of champions. So now, Fleet Footwork is the next one. It's a pretty weak rune, but still some people do want to take it. Moving, attacking, and casting builds energy. When you reach full stacks, which is 100, your next attack will heal you, grant you extra movement speed, and restore mana or energy if that attack procs on a champion. So the heal is as shown with AD and AP scaling. Movement speed is 20% for a second, and when you attack a champion, you restore 8% missing mana or energy. And the heal is 60% for melee and 20% for range when you attack minions. So recently just got nerfed in patch 3.2 on the healing. So basically, this is really a keystone that firstly you take in lane if you have a very hard lane matchup. So sometimes Camille's and Akali's want to take this if they're into a very hard lane matchup, and Akali wants to take this for the energy restore as well. So basically you have 2 reasons to take this. Number 1, for the energy restore, which at this point in time only Akali really goes for that energy restore. And secondly, for the sustain in either the lane or the jungle. Like I think jungle, you think something like a Mundo or a Camille in the jungle might want to take Fleet Footwork because they don't have any other better option. But basically, it's quite a weak rune overall. And basically, most champions who take this only take it because they have no other better option, like someone like Jhin, for example. Next, we have Grasp of the Undying. So Grasp, every 3 seconds in combat, your next attack on an enemy champion will be enhanced, which will deal a bonus 3% of your max health as magic damage, heal for 2% of your max health, and permanently increase your health by 5. On ranged champions, the effects are reduced by 40%. So basically, you want to take this on not most, but you mainly take this on tanks and fighters, mostly in the top lane. Like other roles don't generally take this. It's generally a top lane or Baron lane focused rune. The only champion I can think off the top of my head that takes it that's not a Baron laner is going to be Senna, because she doesn't really have better rune choice than Grasp of the Undying. But yeah, it's just a very good general rune for top lane fighters because of the bonus damage it does scaling off with your max health, and they build max health, and also gives you that little bit of heal, which is going to be very useful for your 1v1 in the Baron lane. Next up, we have Aftershock. So after immobilizing an enemy champion, you gain defenses and later deal a burst of magic damage around you. The defenses and the damage shown around you. Take note that the main usage of this rune is for the defenses, not for the damage, and it has a 20-second cooldown. Now this is mostly taken by tank engage supports, or some tanks in the top lane, and in the mid lane, Galio takes it, but basically it's mainly taken by tank engage supports in particular. It's a really good rune for a lot of tank engagers like Leona, like Thresh, like Alistar, and really helps them to gain those tanky stats when they go in for the engage. A lot of the tankiness comes from the Aftershock, so really good on those tank engage supports in particular. Now, Fawn of Life. Hitting an enemy champion with an attack or ability marks them, and when your allies or you damage the marked champion, it heals the allies and you around the area. So each ally can trigger this healing only once per mark. So as you guys can see, the healing is 6% of your max health for the ally and 2% of the max health for you, scaling off with AP mark, lasts for 3 seconds, and it has a 8-second cooldown for melee champions and 12-second cooldown for ranged champions. And if more than one person takes Fawn of Life, the subsequent heal from other allies marks are reduced by to 25%. So as of recording in patch 3.2, Fawn of Life is also one of the most terrible runes, and only Braum currently takes Fawn of Life just because he has no other better rune choice, and the only other viable person who can take Fawn is Nami. And Fawn, basically, it's quite obvious. It's taken only by supports to basically proc their healing, proc their Ardent Sensor, proc, you know, their support items, and just give a little bit of extra heal in lane. But it used to be very strong, so they nerfed it to the point where the healing is nearly negligible, and really nobody takes Fawn of Life anymore. So next up, we have the two new keystones. We have first up have Kraken Slayer, which you gain stacks when attacking enemy champion, and at 3 stacks you'll deal bonus true damage to that champion, or to whichever champion gets hit with your third attack. It also scales with bonus AD as well as AP. Currently, only 2 champions in the game can take it viably, which is Akshan and Lucian, because the damage of Kraken Slayer is very low and nearly negligible in the late game. So Kraken Slayer, not really the best rune, but it does give you that a little bit of true damage if you need it. Next we have Lethal Tempo, probably the best rune for anybody who can take it. You gain a stack of attack speed when you attack enemy champions, which stacks up to 6 times. At full stacks you gain 30% bonus attack speed, and the stacks are 6% to 12% for melee and 3 to 9% for range, scaling off of levels, and they last for 6 seconds. So basically this is a pretty straightforward rune. Basically anybody who wants to attack and attack fast is going to take it. Think a majority of the ADCs, some fighters like Tryndamere, Jax, and Yasuo, and yeah, that's pretty much who takes it. And what it does is pretty obvious. It lets you attack faster, so I don't think this one has to be explained all that much. Yeah. So we can move on to Domination. So Domination, first up we have Brutal, which gives you 7 extra AD or 14 extra AP. Now this rune is basically a laning phase rune because it doesn't scale at all. So when you reach late game, the stats this gives you is going to be negligible. So it's pretty much a laning phase rune to do a little bit more damage in the lane. Next up, Gathering Storm. Every 3 minutes you gain adaptive AD or AP and numbers as shown. So this rune basically is a scaling rune where it gives you very little at the beginning, but like when you get to 9 minutes onwards, it starts to give you a decent amount as it stacks up in terms of AD and AP. It's pretty bad on AD champions because it doesn't really give you a lot of AD, if you guys can take a look at that. But on AP champions, you actually get decent amounts. Like at 9 minutes you get 18, and at like 12 minutes you get 28. So it's not a negligible amount. So basically, really only late game AP mages want to take this, or AP champions want to take this. And next we have Hunter Vampirism. So gain 2% physical vamp or magic vamp, and each unique champion takedown grants 2 AD with 1% physical vamp or 4 AP with 1% magic vamp, adaptive depending on what type of damage you have. So this rune is basically the go-to ADC rune. Not a lot of other roles want to take Hunter Vampirism. Mostly it's only taken by ADCs for that extra vamp. Next up, Triumph. So champion takedowns restore 10% missing health, deals 5% more damage to enemies below 35% health. Now the buffs to this made it really viable. It's amazing on reset champions, especially like Katarina and like Darius, for example, who of course get to proc Triumph a lot and gets a lot of extra healing as well as dealing damage to low HP enemies. Aside from that, any champion that deals damage and doesn't have a other rune choice, or they want to execute damage when enemies are low, do want to take Triumph. So there is that. Now champion, high risk high reward rune, which gives you 8% extra damage against champions, but lose 4% each time you die. So after you die twice, this basically becomes no rune at all. So basically this is honestly at the moment not really a lot of people want to take this. This rune is not very meta at the moment, but basically you only really want to take champion on champions like Draven, who have very strong early game, or unless you're really very confident of not dying in the lane, like you have a very easy matchup. Think like, for example, if you're playing against a Nasus in the top lane, champion might be a good choice because you know Nasus is likely not going to kill you, for example. Next up, weakness. Impairing the movement of an enemy champion makes them take 5% more damage in the following 5 seconds. Generally taken by supports with slows or with CC to allow their entire team to do more damage to the enemy champion. However, it can also be taken by pretty much any champion with CC, like Ashe, for example. Next up, Scorch. So Scorch, Damaging an enemy champion with an ability burns them and deals a little bit of bonus magic damage, 21 to 35 bonus magic damage after 1 second. Now this is also another laning phase rune, where basically does a little bit of extra damage when you cast an ability on them. Now, honestly, in my opinion, no one actually takes Scorch, because Brutal is just a better version of Scorch. So Scorch's damage is really nearly negligible. In the first few levels, it is something like, it does do a lot of damage in like the first 3 to 5 levels, but after that, it's basically negligible. And I know the same can be said with Brutal, but at least getting that a little bit of stats is more useful than getting like 35 magic damage when you're level 15. I mean, even on the mage, they do more damage than 35 with one basic attack. So really, I think this is a very useless rune, but it's an early game rune that is targeted at mainly mages. But basically anyone who really wants a strong early game can take Scorch, but Brutal is just better. Giant Slayer is the tank buster rune. Deals bonus damage based on the enemy's bonus health, up to 10% bonus damage if the enemy has 1,000 bonus health. So basically every 100 bonus health you do an extra 1% damage. It's a very niche rune for in fact, it doesn't even have to be for damaging champions. Like on a tank you could also take this in the top lane, for example, but really this is a niche rune counter pick against a tanky team comp. Like, it really isn't worth it to go for this rune if there's only like 1 or 2 tanks in the enemy team. You have to have, I think, like at least 1 tank, 1 fighter, and another tank or fighter. At least 3 tanky champions that this is going to counter to make it worth it to take Giant Slayer. Aside from that, I don't really think it's worth taking, but you can take this rune on anybody, like a tank, mage, marksman, anybody can take this rune. So now we're going to move on to the resolve tree. So first up, adaptive carapace. Gain 50 health, and when you're below half health, gain 12 armor or 12 magic resist based on the damage you took more of in the last minute. So this is obviously a very strong laning phase rune, because the stats it gives you is going to be negligible like when you get to mid and late game. However, it's pretty weak at the moment because Nullifying Ore is a better rune than Adaptive Carapace at doing its job. We'll cover Nullifying Ore later, but basically Adaptive Carapace is for people who want a strong laning phase. Next up, Conditioning. So Conditioning, you gain 5 bonus AR and MR for the first 3 minutes, after 3 minutes of the game, and every 2 minutes after that, gain additional 2 armor and magic resist. So this rune is supposed to be like the Gathering Storm, but the tank version of Gathering Storm. So obviously it's going to be taken only by champions who want to be more tanky, like basically tanks and fighters. But really, Resolve Tree has a lot better options, so not many people really take Conditioning because it scales way too slowly. Next up, 100 Titan. Probably the best rune in the Resolve Tree. You gain 20 max health, and unique champion takedowns give you an extra 20 max health and 3% tenacity. Tenacity reduces the time that you are CC'd, in case you're not aware. So at full stacks, it gives you 15% tenacity and 100 extra max health. It's self-explanatory. You take it against enemy teams that have a lot of CC, and any role can take it, whether you're a tank or whether you're an assassin or a marksman. Whoever you are, you can take this against a high CC enemy team. Next up, Second Wind. Gain 5 health every 5 seconds, and after taking damage from an enemy champion, regenerate 3 plus 1.5% of mystic health over the next 5 seconds, and the effect is doubled for melee champions. So basically, this rune is really only taken by melee champions in the mid lane or in the top lane where you have a tough laning matchup. So think about, for example, if you are a melee champion and you're going to a ranged champion in the mid or top lane, you normally want to take Second Wind. If not, you're just going to get bullied and destroyed in lane. So Second Wind is basically just a rune to help you survive the laning phase, but it is actually very effective at helping you survive laning phase. So it's really good for any champions who have a weak laning phase or who are melee into ranged. Basically, Loyalty. You gain 2 armor and 5 magic resist, where your closest ally gains 5 armor and 2 magic resist. Basically only taken by supports because it's a very supportive rune. And really, it's only taken if you have no other better rune to take in the Resolve Tree, which is quite rare because Loyalty is a relatively weak rune, even for supports, because a lot of other runes have a lot more value than Loyalty. So there's that. Bone Plating. After taking the damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 champion abilities or attacks against you within 1.5 seconds deals 30 to 60 less damage with a 35-second cooldown. So this is basically an anti-burst rune. Now, this is meant to be a laning phase rune, but it's very easily played around in the laning phase. So it really actually became more of a late game rune where if you're against a lot of burst mages like Echo or Aery, you know, anybody who wants to burst you down, you can take this to kind of counter them. and prevent them from bursting you so much. But honestly, like even like 3 times 60 less of damage, 180 is not that much. So it's not really the greatest rune, but it does do its job relatively effectively. Next up, we have Ultimate Shield. Gain a shield after casting your ultimate for the next 3 seconds. The shield amount will be 75 plus 15 times your level. So not the largest shield in the world, like Barrier gives you way more. A decent sized shield, and really only used for champions who go in with their ultimate. So think champions like Morgana, champions like Kennen that want to use ultimate and just dive straight on into the enemy team. Very, very niche rune for those particular ultimate engaged champions. Next up, Nullifying Ore. If you would take damage that causes you to fall below 35% of your max HP, you gain a shield for 4 seconds, and the shield is 80 plus 50% bonus AD and or 30% AP, cooldown of 60 seconds. So this is a very strong laning phase rune, because although the shield is very small, but in laning phase, that 80 shield plus a little bit of bonus actually gives you a lot of value in the laning phase, and very easy to win a 1v1 or a 2v2, just any kind of trade or all-in just with this rune. So this is a very strong rune for the laning phase. Next up, Inspiration runes. So first rune, Pathfinder. Gain 9% movement speed in brush, jungle, and river when out of combat. So basically this is only taken by junglers or roaming support. So junglers, it's obvious, you actually rotate around the map a lot faster. Like when you're clearing, you get to camps a lot faster. When you're like ganking, you get to lanes faster, and it really shouldn't be underestimated because it actually increases your tempo by a lot in the game. The only other champions that take this are roaming supports, things like Rakan or Alistar, who want to leave bot lane and roam to mid lane. This helps them roam really quickly, so it is really effective for that. Next up, Mastermind, really only taken by junglers as well. Deal 10% bonus true damage to epic monsters, and participating in defeating epic monsters lets you gain 100 bonus gold. So it's self-explanatory. It allows you to take monsters faster, and you get more gold when you take down monsters. So really only taken by junglers because they benefit the most from this, because they're going to be at every single epic monster fight. Next up, Hunter Genius. Gain 3 ability haste, and each unique champion takedown gives you another 3. So at total, this will give you 18 ability haste if you get all 5 champion takedowns. This one is pretty obvious, pretty self-explanatory. Basically, you take this on any champion who wants to get their abilities up more often. Most commonly, it's mages, but even on some ADCs, this can be really useful as well, and some junglers as well. Next up, Sweet Tooth. Increases the honey fruit healing by 20%, and when you are a nearby ally eats the honey fruit, you gain 15 gold per honey fruit. Now this used to be the most OP rune in the inspiration tree, but now it is literally the worst after it got nerfed. It got nerfed by 5 gold, and the healing increase got reduced as well. So basically every other rune in this is, in the inspiration tree is going to be better than Sweet Tooth. So basically just never take Sweet Tooth, at least of the recording of this video in patch 3.2, unless they nerf some other runes or they, you know, buff some other runes. Pack Hunter. When a nearby ally while nearby ally champions, you gain 2% extra movement speed, and for each unique ally you participate in a takedown with, you gain 50 gold and your ally gains 50 gold. So really obvious, this one is a support rune. So you of course get a little bit of extra movement speed, and each of your allies get an extra 50 gold when they score their first takedown with you. So basically it's taken by supports when they have no other better rune to take, because a lot of supports, they need runes like mana flow ban, for example, if they have mana problems. Or like, you know, something else, maybe a Pathfinder, maybe even Hunter Genius is better. But this rune doesn't give you a whole load of value, but it gives you decent value. So really, you would take other runes. Unless you don't have any other better rune, then you go for Pack Hunter. Next up, Mana Flow Ban. Hitting an enemy champion with an ability or an empowered attack permanently increases your max mana by 30 up to 300 mana. So this one really self-explanatory, taken by any champion who has mana issues. It could be a tank support, it could be a marksman, it could be more commonly a mage, could be even a tank, could be anybody. But basically if you have mana problems, take Mana Flow Ban, simple as that. Next up, Nimbus Cloak. The best default option if you don't know what rune to take, or you have no other better choice. After casting a summoner spell, you gain 5 to 25% movement speed for 2 seconds. The speed up effectiveness depends on summoner spell cooldown. So on flash, it's 25% extra movement speed, and on other summoner spells, it will scale according to their cooldown. So Nimbus Cloak is basically useful in every single champion. There would be no instance where you wouldn't want extra movement speed. That's why it's the best rune to take if you don't know or what else to take, or if you really don't have any other better rune option. Basically, that's about it. Lastly, Demolish. When you're within 5.5 range of the enemy turret, gain a charge every 0.5 seconds up to 6 times, and when you fully stack, your next basic attack against turrets deals an additional 200 plus 25% of your max HP physical damage. Cooldown 35 seconds, which is relatively short. Basically taken by split pushers, top lane tanks, top lane fighters, or even some junglers who want to push like Tryndamere and Jax. So it does what it advertises, which is allows you to take towers more easily and faster. So basically anybody who wants to take towers basically takes Demolish. So that is pretty much it for all of the runes. I tried to talk a little bit faster and just try to cover everything in as short of a time as possible without compromising on the quality and, you know, what I need to cover. So hopefully this video was informative for you and you learned something from it. Thank you guys for watching the video, and goodbye.